Marcus had lived in his quiet suburban neighborhood for years, and while most of the residents minded their own business, there was always one constant problem: Karen. She wasn't just any neighbor, she was the self-proclaimed guardian of the HOA. She strutted around like she owned every street, pointing out supposed violations and filing endless complaints. But her favorite target was Marcus, the only black man living on the block. Every Tuesday, after the garbage truck came, Marcus would drag his empty bin back up his driveway. He always placed it neatly, tucked away, lid closed. And yet, somehow, within hours, it would be tipped over, trash strewn across his lawn. He knew who was behind it. Karen's smug smile, her constant glares, and her loud comments about people who don't belong, made it obvious. At first, Marcus ignored it. He was a former engineer, calm, patient, and not quick to anger. He thought maybe, if he didn't respond, she would lose interest. But the opposite happened. Karen escalated. She began timing her dog walks to when he took the bin out, accidentally kicking it over. Other times, she'd claim she was helping by moving it, only to leave it lying in the street. When Marcus confronted her once, she laughed in his face. "Oh please," she scoffed. "It's just a trash can. If you don't want it falling over, maybe keep it where it belongs." Some of us actually care about property values. That was the moment Marcus decided enough was enough. If she wanted to keep knocking over his bin, he'd give her one she definitely didn't see coming. Marcus spent the next weekend in his garage, sketching plans. With years of engineering experience and a love for tinkering, he had the perfect idea: a smart trash can. It wasn't just any bin. It was rigged with motion sensors, a locking lid, a hidden camera, and something special to discourage tampering. First, he bolted the can onto a weighted platform, making it nearly impossible to tip by hand. Then he added a motion sensor connected to a small compressed air system he had left over from an old project. Finally, he installed a discreet GoPro inside a weatherproof casing. The result looked like a normal trash can from the outside, but anyone who messed with it would be in for a surprise. Tuesday came, and Marcus rolled out his new invention. He sat on his porch with a cup of coffee, pretending to read the paper, but his eyes never left the driveway. Sure enough, right on cue, Karen appeared with her little white dog trotting along beside her. She glanced at Marcus, offered a fake smile, and then turned her attention to the bin. "You really should store this thing out of sight," she called. "The HOA doesn't appreciate clutter." Marcus didn't respond. He simply sipped his coffee. Karen smirked, stepped closer, and gave the bin a shove. The moment her hand made contact, the motion sensor triggered. The lid clamped shut with a loud click, locking in place, and a burst of compressed air whooshed out from the bottom. It wasn't strong enough to hurt, but it startled her so badly that she stumbled backward, shrieking, nearly tripping over her dog. "What the?" she yelled, clutching her chest. Marcus lowered his newspaper, raising an eyebrow. "Everything all right, Karen?" she sputtered, her face red. "Your trash can just attacked me." "It's a trash can," Marcus replied calmly. "Maybe it doesn't like being knocked over." Karen stormed off, dragging her barking dog behind her. But Marcus knew it wasn't over. She was the type who always had to have the last word. The next day, Marcus checked the footage. The camera had captured everything: Karen approaching, pushing the bin, and then screaming as the air hissed out. He smiled. Insurance, just in case she tried to twist the story. Sure enough, a letter arrived from the HOA later that week. It accused Marcus of installing unsafe equipment and creating a hazard to the community. The signature at the bottom: Karen's. Marcus chuckled, tucked the letter under his arm, and walked into the next HOA meeting. The room was full of neighbors, most of them tired of Karen's antics. She sat at the head of the table, smug as ever. "Ah, Marcus," she said loudly, "I hope you're here to explain your dangerous trash can. It nearly injured me." Marcus set his laptop on the table and connected it to the projector. "Funny you should mention that. I brought some evidence." The screen flickered to life, showing crystal clear footage of Karen pushing his bin. Then came the burst of air, her shriek, and her frantic retreat. The room erupted in laughter. Even the HOA president, usually stone-faced, couldn't hide a smirk. Karen's face turned purple, That video is an invasion of privacy. She sputtered. No, Marcus said smoothly. It's my property, my security camera. And here's the thing. If you stop trespassing and stop vandalizing my things, you'll never have to worry about it again. The neighbors murmured in agreement. One older man in the back called out, about time someone stood up to her. The HOA president finally raised his hand for silence. Karen, this is unacceptable behavior. You've been warned before about harassing neighbors. Marcus has every right to protect his property. Case closed. Karen opened her mouth to argue, but no one backed her up. Not this time. She left the meeting in a huff, her dog's nails clicking furiously against the floor. From that day on, Marcus's trash can remained upright. Karen gave it a wide berth whenever she passed, glaring but never daring to touch it again. In fact, she started crossing the street entirely to avoid walking near his house. And Marcus, he sat on his porch every Tuesday, coffee in hand, enjoying the peace. His little invention had done more than protect his trash, it had put an end to months of petty harassment. The neighbors respected him, the HOA had stopped siding with Karen, and best of all, he had the satisfaction of knowing she'd never see it coming again. The smartest trash can in the neighborhood had earned its place of honor. Marcus Johnson had always been the kind of man who kept to himself. A retired engineer in his late 40s, he took pride in maintaining his home, keeping his lawn trimmed, and minding his own business. For the most part, the neighborhood was quiet and friendly, the kind of place where kids rode their bikes and neighbors waved as they drove by. But every paradise had a serpent, and for Marcus, that serpent was Karen Whitmore. Karen wasn't just a neighbor, she was the self-appointed enforcer of every unwritten rule in the subdivision. If someone painted their shutters the wrong shade of beige, she was on the phone with the HOA. If a car was parked on the street for more than 12 hours, she was writing down the license plate. She had built her entire identity around being the eyes and ears of the community, and unfortunately for Marcus, she seemed to have made him her personal project. It started small. Dirty looks when he parked his pickup truck in the driveway. Passive-aggressive comments about how people like you should respect the neighborhood standards. But soon, it evolved into something much more irritating, his trash can. Every Tuesday after garbage pickup, Marcus would roll his bin neatly back to the side of the house. He was meticulous, making sure the lid was closed and it wasn't blocking the sidewalk. And yet, without fail, by the evening, the can would be on its side, trash scattered across his lawn. At first, he thought it was just bad luck, maybe raccoons, maybe the wind. But then he noticed the timing. It only ever happened within an hour of Karen walking her little white dog. He even caught her once, red-handed, when he stepped outside to grab the mail. She had just nudged the can with her foot, tipping it over. When she saw him, she laughed like it was the funniest thing in the world. "Oh, don't be so sensitive," she called out, tugging her dog's leash. "If you don't want it falling, maybe put it somewhere less tacky. This is a nice neighborhood, not a junkyard." Marcus clenched his jaw but said nothing. He knew exactly what she was doing, baiting him, trying to provoke a reaction. He had learned long ago not to play into that. But each time he bent over to pick up cans, bottles, and wrappers from his neatly trimmed grass, his patience wore thinner. Weeks turned into months, and the pattern didn't stop. Some nights, Karen would even knock it over twice, just to make her point. She thrived on his silence, her smirk widening each time she saw him cleaning up. To her, it was a game. To him, it was disrespect. One evening, as Marcus stood over his fallen bin again, he finally muttered to himself, "All right. You want to play games. Let's play." He wasn't the type to yell, call the cops, or write angry letters. He was an engineer, a problem solver. And if Karen was going to keep treating his trash can like a toy, then he'd give her one that fought back. That weekend, Marcus turned his garage into a workshop. Blueprints, wires, and tools spread across his workbench as he pieced together an idea that made him smile. He started by reinforcing the bottom of the bin, mounting it to a weighted platform that made it nearly impossible to knock over without serious effort. Then he added a motion sensor, something simple but effective, wired to trigger a release valve attached to a small compressed air tank he had from an old project. When tripped, the can would let out a loud hiss and puff of air strong enough to startle anyone nearby. But Marcus didn't stop there. He wanted proof, just in case Karen tried to twist the story around like she always did. So he installed a hidden GoPro in a waterproof casing on the side of the bin, angled perfectly to capture anyone approaching. By the time he finished, the trash can looked ordinary, no different from the one she had been tipping for months. But inside, it was anything but ordinary. Tuesday came again, and Marcus rolled out his creation. He didn't hover or make it obvious. He simply set the can by the driveway, sat on his porch with a mug of coffee, and waited. The sun had barely begun to set when he saw her. Karen, in her bright pink tracksuit, sunglasses perched on her head, her little dog tugging on the leash. She glanced toward Marcus, offered a thin, fake smile, then turned her attention to the bin. "You really ought to store that in your garage," she called out loudly, making sure nearby neighbors could hear. "Trash cans are an eyesore." Marcus just lifted his coffee to his lips, not saying a word. Karen, emboldened by his silence, strutted up to the can and gave it a shove. The instant her hand pushed, the motion sensor triggered. The lid clamped shut with a loud metallic click, and a sharp hiss of air blasted out from the side vents. Karen screamed, stumbling backward, yanking her dog's leash so hard the poor thing yelped. Her sunglasses flew off, landing in the grass. "What the hell was that?" she shrieked, eyes wide, face red. Marcus set his coffee down, feigning confusion. "Everything okay, Karen? That thing just attacked me," she barked, pointing at the can. He raised an eyebrow. "It's a trash can. Maybe you startled it," Karen sputtered, at a rare loss for words. She tugged her dog along and stomped away. Muttering under her breath, Marcus leaned back in his chair, hiding a grin. The camera had caught every second. Later that night, he reviewed the footage. Crystal clear, perfect evidence of Karen tipping his bin and then jumping back like she'd seen a ghost. He saved the file to his computer, labeling it insurance. The next morning, as expected, an envelope from the wall landed in his mailbox. It accused him of installing hazardous equipment on community property and creating a potential danger to residents. The complaint, of course, was signed by Karen. Marcus chuckled, tucking the letter under his arm. He knew exactly what to do with it. The next HOA meeting was in 3 days, and for once, he was going to attend. That night, he sat at his computer, editing together the footage into a short, neat clip. He added timestamps, even slowed down the part where Karen shoved the bin. He wanted there to be no room for argument. For Marcus, this wasn't just about a trash can anymore. It was about principle, about standing up to the petty harassment that he had endured for too long. Karen thought she was clever, untouchable because of her loud voice and fake authority. But this time, she had no idea what was coming. And as Marcus leaned back in his chair, replaying the clip and imagining the look on her face when it played in front of the entire HOA, he smiled. The game had just changed.